Hello, I'm the Grove Street Lodger, and come to the end of November. It's the 1st of December today, and we'll go through some books. Not loads, because once again, I've been rehearsing in the play. First official performance was yesterday. First performance in front of an audience was actually Thursday. It's going very well. It's really good fun, and so that'll be this week, and then let's find something else to do. Ooh, back on the books. I've read a few things, and very good things this month actually. So the first thing I read was An Instance of the Fingerpost by Iain Pears. Could be pronounced Pears, I suppose. This is, officially a murder mystery. There is a murder and there is a mystery, but it's not really what it's about. It's set in the 1660s in Cambridge. Was it Oxford? It was Cambridge. I recognise some of the street names. Doesn't really matter. Hang on. Doesn't really matter, he says. Looking, well, it does because of the people that were there. Oxford in the 1660s, and it does matter because that used to be the royalist capital during the Civil War, and a lot of this is about the hangovers left from the Civil War, even though the Restoration has happened, and there's some sneaky things there about how the Restoration happened as well. So you have four narrators, and they essentially have a novella each, where they narrate the events around a certain time, which do include a murder and a mystery, but each one has their own agenda and their own thing they're pursuing. So, therefore, oblique looks at at this mesh, and they all read this mesh of events in different ways, and it's really fascinating. It's really good, and what's it particularly good at is the way that they are different aspects of how people saw things at the time, and they all have views of the world that stem from when they live. And sort of the big reveal, the big twist, is one that doesn't work in the 21st century. We wouldn't really accept it, but it does work in the sort of apocalyptic free flow of ideas of the 1660s. So that's really fun. There's a lot of stuff there about science and knowledge and new ways of getting knowledge and retaining knowledge, and kind of how things are unknowable, even with science or religion or politics or spycraft. What have I pressed there? Whoops. So many different ways to. Sorry about that. I pressed out. So many different ways to obtain knowledge and assess it and understand it. And no one of the four narrators has the whole story, and you as a reader has to sort of assess them and work out what the story is for you, whether it is a conspiracy or whether it's just a mess of events and things like that. It's really gripping and really fun, and although quite chunky, just a very quick, enjoyable read. I very much enjoyed An Instance of the Fingerpost. So I read the book about Abiezer Coppe and Christopher Smart last month. And so it led me into a sort of Civil War-y thing, which is why I ended up picking Instance of Fingerpost. And then I got The Mad Crew, a ranter anthology by Kirk Watson. It's, as far as I can tell, it's an Amazon print-on-demand thing, but it's very well done. And the selections are really good. So you have both of Abiezer Coppe's fiery flying rolls, which are just fantastic. I love them. But you have some others. So you've got The Mad Crew, which I think is not a ranter pamphlet. I think it's taken the piss out of the ranters by making sort of a comic version, because it's essentially so the ranters aren't really a solid group. They're a loose conglomeration that people now have made of people with similar-ish ideas at the time. So they've killed the king, and the whole of society and religion are all up for grabs. And so the ranters said, well, God is one. God is all one thing. So when you sin, you're still doing what God wants. So sin is not a bad thing. Sin is just another way of behaving in God, because everything you do is part of God. And so the Mad Crew is essentially saying, I get to be more holy the more I shag around. It's great. The drunker I get, the more God loves me. So I think that's a bit of a piss take. And then Abiezer Coppe's fiery flying rolls don't really go on about the sin thing so much. It's more, hey, rich people, God's coming back, and you better be shit scared. He says, Jesus describes himself as coming like a thief in the night. He's not coming like a thief. He's coming like a highwayman, and he wants your money. You better start giving your money away and hugging beggars. And he talks about how he hugged this beggar with no nose. He said he had as much of a nose as I have on my hand, just two small holes where his nose should stand. And he talks about this as his work. He goes, I shall carry on my work, my strange work, and when you hear of it, both your ears shall tingle. Abiezer Coppe's a badass. Love Abiezer Coppe. And then there was some other people. So there was a guy called Caxon or Clarkson. His name's spelled differently. And he's trying to be more logical, and he's using sort of logical arguments and almost sort of scholastic arguments to try and argue this point about God being everything and about sin not being real and things like that. And then there's a guy called Bartholomew, and he's very meditative and peaceful, and he's not trying to convince, he's just trying to think his way through it out loud and encouraging people to think with him. So this book contains, they're all about the same kind of idea, this essentially this anarchy that comes in when the traditional notion of religion, society, kingship all goes out the window, but very, very different takes on it, and it's a really good collection. Kirk Watson did a good deal here. Right, so after that, I wanted a bit more Abiezer Coppe. So I got this Abiezer Coppe selected writings. To be honest, most of it is just two fiery flying rolls again, but then you get the remonstrance of the sincere and zealous protestation of Abiezer Coppe, which is Abiezer's sort of, he had to write it in order to get let out of prison. So he's officially saying, oh no, all that stuff I said, I'm sorry, I recant it, I didn't mean any of it. But he's unofficially saying it's all true. He changed his name to Dr. Iain and just went around preaching again after this. Less extreme stuff, but Dr. I am, and God is I am, that I am. He hadn't given up his ways, really. And there are little hints in him saying sorry, which I kind of find fun. And then there's a couple of little bits at the end. One's a poem about being a true Christian. And another is just a little rant. The divine fireworks or some sparkles from the spirit of burning in the dead letter. And it keeps doing this phrase. The lion who long time sleeped is by the consuming fire out of his den fired. Being roused, he roared. The beasts of the forest trembled. Were any of the children frightened? Have any of them stumbled? It's got a good rhythm to it. He's a really good writer. A lot of passion and vigour and really good rhythms. So I love a bit of Abiezer Coppe. And what's funny is even though I read this one straight after the other one, I did read Fiery Flying Roll twice, because Fiery Flying Roll is so good. I recommend that. Yeah. So after that, I read Hannah Greig, the Beau Monde. I used to follow her on Twitter. I don't know if I still do, because I don't really go on Twitter very much now. She was very interesting. She does a lot of help and consultancy work on TV and stuff. I think she went for the Duchess film. She wrote this book. It started off as her PhD dissertation about the Beau Monde, the ton, the upper class fashionable set in 18th century London. That's the thing. It was driven by Parliament. So when Parliament was in session, they all went down to London and had their thing, and then in the summer they went off back to their private places in the countryside. And the big argument is essentially, hey, these people weren't as useless as you think. They did influence things. Their life really was politics, and all of the balls and all of the show and all of the glitz and even the spoons they bought or the kind of candlesticks they had were all not just signs to show they were together and they were the elite and that they were a unit, but where on the political spectrum within that they were, and Whigs and Tories and things. And so it's trying to argue, these people weren't just rich people splashing money out on nothing. They were doing things, and they did have a point. And it even tries to argue that the 18th century court did have influence. It wasn't all just townies. And the argument is such that it's enough for me to rethink it and think, oh yeah, there was a bit more going on in the ton than I expected. But at the same time, I still think the real stuff was happening in the city, in London itself. Though, you know, the needs of the ton did influence that. And yeah, they thought they were doing something. And the last book, I mean, I've got through this real quick today. Oh, well, there we go. That must be good. This is James Morrow. This is The Way the World Ends. Spoilers. It ends in nuclear war on page 50. But what then, you see? And this is spoilers because the mystery of it's quite fun. They're these people. So this man, there's a fashion for anti-nuclear suits. And this man can't afford one. But someone comes up to him and says, well, if you go to this place and sign a contract, you'll get a free one for your daughter. So he goes to sign the contract. And the contract says, if a nuclear war happens to come, you can blame me for it. And he signs it thinking, well, it's not going to come, even though he's buying an anti-nuclear war suit. But hey. And he hasn't even got home yet when nuclear war comes and blows up everybody, including his family. And he gets abstracted onto a submarine along with 6 other people. And it turns out these 6 people are the people being blamed for the nuclear war. The USSR people have just been allowed to die. They haven't even been allowed to get to trial. And the people putting them on trial are the unborn future children. So because of the huge extent of the annihilation of the human race, these 6 people are the last 6 people quite soon. It's allowed the unborn human race through, and they put them on trial and hang most of them. And that's what the book is. It's a sort of absurdist look at mutually assured destruction, nuclear war planning, just the whole fact it's all a double bluff, and you just don't want anyone to call the bluff because the entire world will melt. And what causes the nuclear war in this is an extinct species of vulture gets caught on NORAD cameras, and they think it's the Soviets launching a strike, and so they strike, and so the Soviets strike, and everyone strikes. And so it's bleakly funny. It fizzles off a bit at the end, but it was a really good book. I don't know if you call it science fiction now. It's published as a science fiction classic, and there's not a lot of science fiction in it. This whole, unborn children coming thing is not really a science thing, is it? It's a fantasy thing. But it was very good. I very enjoyed it. So that was my reading month, and I really enjoyed the stuff I read this month. I have been rehearsing 3 times a week, and I've had a lot on at work, and so I haven't been reading quite as much. And somehow I've got through that a lot quicker than usual, but hey. I'm currently reading Pickwick Papers, and then I've got a book about Christmas, and then what else really, we'll see. But yeah. And play reviews. I'm One Man, Two Governors at the Caxton. It's great because I'm in it. It's a good review, isn't it? Okay. See you after Christmas. Have fun. Bye-bye.